Introduction. The kitchen light hums with a low buzzing sound that seems to vibrate right behind your eyes. It is 11:30 p.m. The air smells like faded lemon cleaner and the slightly metallic scent of a cold dishwasher. Under your bare feet, the tile feels like ice, but you don't move to put on shoes. You are frozen, staring at a mountain of laundry on the table that looks like a jagged peak of mismatched socks and crumpled shirts. Beside it, your laptop glows with a harsh blue light, showing a half-finished presentation you promised would be done by morning. Your heart is doing a nervous dance in your chest, and your mind is a crowded room where 10 people are talking at once, but none of them are making sense. You feel like you are drowning in life admin. You see other women, the ones at the school drop-off or the ones in the office, who seem to move through their days with a calm, steady rhythm. They have matching Tupperware. They remember crazy sock day without a frantic morning text to the group chat. They don't have a junk drawer that has expanded to take over an entire guest room. To you, they look like they possess a secret manual for being a person that you somehow missed out on during childhood. For years you might have called yourself lazy. Maybe you used the word broken or crazy. You've bought every planner on the market, hoping the next one would be the magic key to unlock your productivity, only to abandon it 3 weeks later because the sight of those empty, judgmental boxes made you feel sick with shame. You are a high achiever who feels like a fraud, a creative soul who feels trapped by your own clutter, and a mother who fears her children will inherit her chaos. The hidden epidemic. In the 1990s, if you walked into a doctor's office and mentioned these struggles, they likely would have handed you a prescription for anxiety or told you that you were just a stressed-out woman. At that time, medical research had a very specific image of what ADHD looked like. They looked for the hyperactive boy, the one who couldn't sit still in his chair, who climbed on desks, and who was a constant disruption in the classroom. From 1990 to 2005, global research institutions were focused almost entirely on this male version of the disorder. Because girls often didn't act out physically, they were ignored. While the boys were bouncing off the walls, the girls were sitting quietly at their desks, their minds bouncing off the walls of their own internal worlds. Researchers like Dr. Ellen Littman began to notice a troubling pattern. They saw millions of women who were struggling with internalized hyperactivity. Instead of running around a room, their thoughts were racing at 100 miles per hour. Instead of being naughty, they were inattentive, daydreaming, losing their keys, and feeling a deep, crushing sense of overwhelm that they hid from the world. The medical community finally realized that the girls had been there all along. We just weren't looking for the right signs. We were looking for a fire, but these women were dealing with a slow, steady smolder that was burning up their energy and their self-esteem. This gender gap in research meant that an entire generation of women grew up thinking their struggles were moral failings rather than biological differences. If you are reading this and feeling a lump in your throat, it is because you have likely spent decades trying to fit a square peg brain into a round hole world. You have been paying what we call the masking tax, the massive amount of energy it takes to pretend you are normal, so that no one sees how hard you are actually working just to keep your head above water. The octopus in the driver's seat. Imagine your brain is a car. In a typical brain, there is one driver who looks at the road, shifts the gears, and follows the map. But in your brain, there is an octopus in the driver's seat. This octopus is brilliant. It can see things other people miss. It is creative, it can juggle 8 things at once, and it has a wonderful sense of humor. But an octopus was never meant to drive a car. It has 8 arms moving in 8 different directions. One arm is trying to change the radio station to find a song that matches its current mood. Another arm is reaching for a snack. A third arm is pointing at a cool bird outside the window. Meanwhile, only one arm is actually on the steering wheel, and it's getting tired. This book is about teaching you how to work with the octopus, instead of screaming at it to be a human. It is about realizing that your brain isn't broken, it is just built different. You have an interest-based nervous system. While other people can do a task because it is important or expected, Your brain only turns on for things that are interesting, challenging, new, or urgent. When you understand this, the shame starts to melt away. You realize you don't need more willpower. You need more stimulation. You don't need to try harder. You need to try differently. Meeting Elena. To see how this looks in the real world, we are going to follow the story of a woman named Elena Rodriguez. Elena is 34 years old and lives in Austin, Texas. To everyone on the outside, Elena is a success story. She is a senior marketing manager at a tech firm. She is married to a kind man named David, and she has 2 beautiful children. But Elena is exhausted. She is what we call the scattered perfectionist. She spends her entire day at work masking, nodding in meetings, while her mind is actually wondering if she left the stove on, or why the person across from her has a tiny coffee stain on their tie. She uses her high intelligence to cover up the fact that her inbox has 4,000 unread emails, and she has no idea where her physical files are. By the time Elena gets home, her battery is completely dead. She walks through the front door and feels a wave of collapse. She can't decide what to make for dinner, so she stares at the fridge until she cries. She snaps at David because the sound of the TV is too loud. She feels like a failure as a mother because she forgot to sign the permission slip for the field trip, again. Elena's initial belief is one that might sound familiar. I am a failure because I can't do the simple things that everyone else finds easy. In the chapters ahead, we will watch Elena go from this state of constant emergency mode to becoming what we call an empowered architect. She will learn why her house stays messy. It's not laziness, it's executive dysfunction. She will learn how to handle the wall of awful that stops her from starting her taxes. And she will finally stop apologizing for the way her brain works. The journey ahead. We are going to travel through time and science to give you the tools you need. We will look at the lives of women who didn't fit the mold, but changed the world anyway. You will meet Hypatia of Alexandria, a mathematician from ancient Egypt who refused to let society tell her how to think. Her ability to see complex patterns is a beautiful example of the ADHD superpower of deep curiosity. You will meet Nellie Bly, a journalist who let her impulsivity lead her on a 72-day trip around the world. She didn't see her restlessness as a problem. She saw it as an engine that could take her anywhere. And you will meet Eleanor Roosevelt, who used her intense energy and non-stop mind to redefine what a woman could achieve in the highest levels of government. This book is divided into 3 parts to help you rebuild your life from the inside out. The foundation. We will look at the hardware of your brain. You will learn about the 7 pillars of executive function and why dopamine is the currency your brain uses to pay attention. You will understand why you can hyper-focus on a craft project for 6 hours, but can't spend 10 minutes on a spreadsheet. The tools. We will move into your physical world. You will learn how to do a sensory audit of your home and office to stop the vibrating feeling of overstimulation. We will talk about the ADHD tax and how to stop paying it through simple, low-friction systems that actually stick. The architecture. We will tackle the emotional side of ADHD. We will talk about rejection-sensitive dysphoria, RSD, that intense stinging pain you feel when you think someone is mad at you. We will look at revenge bedtime procrastination and how to finally get your brain to shut up so you can sleep. Finally, we will talk about boundaries and how to find your tribe of people who get you. Why this works. Everything in these pages is backed by modern neuroscience and the lived experience of thousands of women. This isn't about fixing your ADHD so you can become a boring, linear person. We don't want to kill the octopus, we want to give it better tools. The transformation you are about to experience is real. You will move from being a scattered perfectionist who is constantly apologizing to being an empowered architect who knows exactly how to set up her environment for success. You will learn that your creativity is a gift, your empathy is a strength, and your divergent way of seeing the world is exactly what the modern world needs. You will stop trying to be normal and start being authentic, Think back to that frozen moment in the kitchen at 11:30 p.m. Imagine that instead of feeling shame, you felt a sense of curious observation. Imagine looking at that laundry and that laptop and knowing exactly which tool to use to get moving. Imagine going to bed without a racing heart, knowing that you are enough just as you are. That version of you is waiting. She is smart, she is capable, and she is tired of hiding. It is time to stop fighting your brain and start building a life that actually works with it. The masking tax is over. Your tax refund in the form of energy, clarity, and joy is about to begin. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Day the Mirror Cracked. The rain in Austin, Texas, didn't fall so much as it hovered, a thick gray mist that turned the morning commute into a slow-motion crawl. On Tuesday, October 12th, Elena Rodriguez sat in her car, the windshield wipers rhythmic and mocking. She was 34 years old, a senior manager at a top-tier tech firm, a mother of two, and a woman who felt like she was made of glass that had just begun to spiderweb. She had forgotten the cupcakes for her son's class. Again. It wasn't just the cupcakes, it was the fact that she had written cupcakes on her hand, on a sticky note, and in her digital calendar, and she still managed to drive right past the bakery. As she sat in the school drop-off line, watching other mothers hand over perfectly frosted treats, Elena felt a familiar cold weight in her chest. This was the ordinary morning that would eventually shatter her reflection. For years, she had looked in the mirror and seen someone who just wasn't trying hard enough. But today, the mirror didn't just show a tired woman. It showed a woman who couldn't understand why the most basic parts of life felt like climbing a mountain in flip-flops. The restless mind of Alexandria. Long before the world had a name for this internal storm, there were women who lived within it. In the late 4th century AD, the city of Alexandria was the center of the known world's intellect. It was a place of towering marble and dusty scrolls, where the great library held the secrets of the stars. In the middle of this rigid, male-dominated society, lived Hypatia. Hypatia was a mathematician, an astronomer, and a philosopher. In a time when women were expected to be silent shadows in the home, her mind was a fire that could not be put out. History describes her as having a mind that never rested. While other women were taught the decorum of the household, how to manage servants, how to sew, how to be still, Hypatia was busy tracking the movements of the planets and solving equations that made most men's heads spin. She faced immense pressure to marry and settle into a traditional role. In the eyes of society, a woman's focus should be narrow and domestic. But Hypatia's focus was divergent. It was wide, hungry, and restless. She refused to fit into the standard mold of a proper woman. She chose to spend her nights staring at the heavens, her mind jumping from one complex theory to the next. She didn't know it then, but she was an early example of a mind that doesn't fit the standardized model. Hypatia didn't have a focus problem. She had a focus that was too big for the boxes people tried to put her in. Her refusal to be standardized is the first mirror we can look into. She showed that a mind that moves differently isn't broken. It is simply designed for a different kind of work. But for many women today, the pressure to conform is just as heavy as it was in ancient Egypt. We are told that we should be able to manage the house, the kids, the career, and the social calendar without breaking a sweat. When we can't, we don't think, my brain is different. We think, I am failing. Dismantling the naughty boy myth. The biggest reason so many women reach their 30s or 40s before realizing they have ADHD is a very specific, very stubborn myth. For decades, the medical world and the public at large believed a lie. ADHD is a little boy's disorder. When people think of ADHD, they usually picture a 7-year-old boy named Toby who can't sit still in his chair, throws erasers, and disrupts the classroom. Because Toby is loud and physically active, he gets noticed. He gets a diagnosis. He gets help. But ADHD in women rarely looks like Toby. It doesn't usually look like physical bouncing. Instead, it looks like internalized hyperactivity. While Toby is jumping off his desk, A young girl with ADHD is sitting perfectly still in her seat, but her mind is racing at 200 miles per hour. She is daydreaming about a story she wants to write, worrying about a comment a friend made 3 days ago, and trying to remember if she fed the class hamster all at once. Society expects girls to be quiet, nurturing, and organized. Because of this, girls learn to hide their chaos early on. This is what we call masking. We spend so much energy trying to appear normal and together that we eventually burn out. We aren't hyperactive with our bodies, we are hyperactive with our thoughts. The myth tells us that if you aren't running around the room, you don't have ADHD. The truth is that millions of women are drowning in a sea of mental noise, but because they are polite and helpful, no one ever thinks to check if their brain works differently. We were there all along, the world just wasn't looking for the right signs. The cost of being a high achiever. A woman named Sarah. At 45, Sarah was the CEO of a successful design firm. She was known for her brilliant, out-of-the-box ideas and her ability to handle high-pressure situations. To the outside world, she was a powerhouse. But inside, Sarah was exhausted. Her success was built on a foundation of anxiety-driven productivity. She used fear as a motor. She was terrified of people finding out that her home office was a disaster zone, or that she frequently forgot to pay her electric bill despite having plenty of money in the bank. She stayed up until 3 a.m. every night to finish work she couldn't start at 9 a.m. Sarah used her high intelligence to compensate for her executive dysfunction. If she forgot a meeting, she was smart enough to talk her way out of it. If she lost her keys, she had a backup pair hidden in 5 different places. But this compensation comes with a massive price tag. It's like running a car in the wrong gear. You might get where you're going, but you're going to ruin the engine in the process. This is the compensation mechanism. Many women with ADHD are highly intelligent and creative. They use that intelligence to build elaborate systems to hide their struggles. They become scattered perfectionists. They produce high-quality work, but they do it at the cost of their mental health, their sleep, and their peace of mind. They aren't lazy. They are working twice as hard as everyone else just to stay at the starting line. A quiet office in Austin. Back in Austin, the rain had finally stopped, leaving a humid, heavy heat in the air. Elena Rodriguez sat in a small beige doctor's office. She had spent the last 3 weeks obsessively researching ADHD after stumbling across an article late one night while she was supposed to be doing laundry. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and a slow way of speaking, looked over the results of Elena's assessment. "Elena," she said, "everything you've described, the mental tabs always being open, the crashing fatigue at 5 p.m., the way you can focus on a creative project for 6 hours but can't spend 10 minutes on your taxes, it's not because you're a hot mess. It's because you have ADHD." Elena didn't cry at first. She just sat there, staring at a small plant on the doctor's desk. The word ADHD felt heavy and strange. It didn't fit the image she had of herself. She had a degree. She had a mortgage. She was a senior manager. "But I'm not hyper," Elena whispered. "You are," the doctor replied. "But your hyperactivity is in your brain, not your feet. And the reason you've made it this far without a diagnosis is your IQ. You've been using your intelligence to mask your symptoms. You've been performing the role of competent Elena for 34 years. No wonder you're tired." As she walked to her car, the mask finally slipped. Elena sat in the driver's seat and sobbed. She wasn't crying because she was sad about the diagnosis. She was crying because she was relieved. For the first time in her life, there was a biological reason for the chaos. She wasn't broken. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't lazy. She just had a brain that was wired to scan for new stimuli, instead of focusing on boring repetitive tasks. But right behind the relief came a wave of fury. She felt a deep, burning anger for her younger self. She thought about the girl in middle school who was called spacey and forgetful. She thought about the college student who pulled all-nighters and cried over simple assignments. She mourned for the years she spent hating herself for things she couldn't control. This was the moment the mirror cracked. She couldn't go back to seeing herself the old way, but she didn't quite know how to look at the new version yet. The cycle of the cracked mirror. When a woman receives a late-life diagnosis, she doesn't just get a label, she enters a period of grief. It is a messy, non-linear process that looks a lot like the traditional stages of mourning. Understanding this cycle is the first step toward building a life that actually works. Denial. Maybe the test was wrong. Everyone struggles with laundry, right? I'm probably just stressed or need more sleep. Anger. Why didn't my teacher see this? Why did my parents just call me unmotivated? Think of what I could have done if I had known this 10 years ago. Bargaining. If I just find the perfect planner or the right app, I can fix my ADHD and finally be like everyone else. Depression. I've spent my whole life fighting my own brain. I'm exhausted. I'll never be normal, so what's the point? Acceptance. My brain works differently. It has incredible strengths and real challenges. I'm going to stop trying to be a farmer and start learning how to be a hunter. Most women bounce between these stages for months. You might feel acceptance on Monday when you use a new strategy that works, only to fall back into anger on Wednesday when you lose your phone for the third time that day. This is normal. The goal isn't to get over it quickly. The goal is radical validation. Radical validation means looking at your struggles and saying, this is happening, it is real, and it is not a moral failing. It is shifting the question from what is wrong with me to what is my brain trying to tell me. When you stop fighting the reality of your neurobiology, you finally have the energy to start working with it. The strategy of the divergent mind. So, how do you move forward once the mirror has cracked? You start by changing the architecture of your life. You stop trying to build a standard life and start building a custom one. This begins with 3 foundational shifts. Audit the anxiety. Look at where you are using fear and adrenaline to get things done. Are you only able to clean the house when someone is coming over in 20 minutes? Are you only able to finish a report when the deadline is 2 hours away? That is anxiety-driven productivity. It works, but it kills your nervous system. Identifying these moments is the first step to replacing them with better dopamine hooks. Identify the compensation. What are the masks you wear? Do you over-prepare for meetings because you're afraid of losing your train of thought? Do you stay quiet in social settings because you're afraid of interrupting? Notice the energy cost of these behaviors. Practice the pause. When you feel the shame spiral starting, that voice that says, here I go again failing at life, pause and name it. Say out loud, this is my executive dysfunction, not my character. This isn't about fixing your ADHD. You cannot fix a brain structure. You can, however, engineer an environment where that brain can thrive. Hypatia didn't try to stop her mind from wandering to the stars. She used that wandering to map the universe. Sarah didn't have to stop being a big-picture thinker. She had to hire an assistant to handle the small picture details that drained her battery. The story continues. Elena sat in her car for a long time that afternoon, watching the steam rise from the Texas pavement. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a new world. The diagnosis was a map, but she still had to walk the path. She thought about her daughter, who was 7 and already starting to show the same spacey brilliance Elena had at that age. She realized that by reclaiming her own focus and taming her own mental chaos, she wasn't just saving herself. She was changing the legacy for the women who came after her. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She didn't call her husband. She didn't check her email. Instead, she opened a blank note and wrote one sentence at the top. I am not broken, I am just built differently. It was a small start, a tiny crack in the old narrative of shame. But as she drove home, she didn't feel like she was drowning anymore. She felt like she was finally learning how to swim in the water she had been in all along. The journey from being a scattered perfectionist to an empowered architect had begun. The road ahead would be full of forgotten keys, unfinished projects, and mental tabs that refused to close, but for the first time, Elena knew she had the right tools to build a life that worked with her brain, not against it. Chapter 2: Why do we apologize for our own brains? In 2019, a group of researchers decided to watch how girls and boys played on school playgrounds. They weren't just looking for who ran the fastest or who climbed the highest. They were looking for something much quieter. They wanted to see how children with ADHD acted when they were around their friends. The researchers noticed something that had been hidden for a very long time. While the boys with ADHD were often easy to spot, they were the ones jumping off swings or running in circles. The girls were doing something much more difficult. They were watching. These girls were keeping their eyes glued to the popular girls. They were carefully copying how those girls sat, how they laughed, and how they tucked their hair behind their ears. If a popular girl crossed her legs, the girl with ADHD crossed hers a second later. If the group started talking about a specific TV show, the girl with ADHD nodded along, even if she had never seen it. She was working incredibly hard to look exactly like everyone else. This is called social camouflaging, but most of us just know it as masking. It is the act of hiding who you really are, so you can fit into a world that wasn't built for your brain. The study found that this constant acting job is the main reason women are diagnosed with ADHD so much later than men. We are so good at pretending to be normal that we even fool the experts. But there is a hidden price for this performance. The researchers found that the girls who masked the most were also the ones who felt the most anxious and sad. They were succeeding at fitting in, but they were failing at feeling okay. The invention of the perfect lady. This pressure to hide our true selves didn't start on a modern playground. It has roots that go back hundreds of years. In the late 18th and 19th centuries, a movement began in England and the United States that changed how women were expected to exist in public. These were called finishing schools. These schools weren't meant to teach women how to be scientists or leaders. They were designed to teach them how to be invisible, organized, and perfectly still. Imagine a young woman named Clara, living in London in 1880. Clara has a brain that moves like a hummingbird. She wants to talk about 3 different things at once. She forgets where she put her gloves every 10 minutes, and she feels like she has a motor inside her that never stops. In a different world, Clara might be seen as energetic and creative. But in 1880, Clara is sent to a finishing school to learn decorum. At this school, Clara is taught that a lady never raises her voice. She is taught that a lady's movements must be repressed and measured. She spends hours walking across a room with a heavy book balanced on her head. If the book falls, it's not just a mistake, it's a sign that she lacks self-control. She is taught to manage a household with a rigid schedule where every spoon and every candle has a specific place. For someone with ADHD, this isn't just school. It is a form of mental torture. Because Clara's brain cannot naturally do these things, she has to use every ounce of her energy to perform the role of the perfect lady. If she fails, the doctors of her time have a word for it: hysteria. They might say she is rebellious or morally weak. She learns very quickly that if she wants to be safe and loved, she must apologize for her natural instincts. She must build a mask that looks like the quiet, organized woman society demands. This era created a blueprint for the masking tax that many women are still paying today. We are the granddaughters of women who were told that their messy, fast-moving brains were a medical problem that needed to be hidden behind a corset and a smile. The corporate networking mixer. Elena Rodriguez stood in a crowded hotel ballroom in Austin, Texas. The room was filled with the smell of expensive coffee and the loud hum of 300 people talking at once. As a senior marketing manager, this was part of her job. On the outside, Elena looked like she had it all figured out. She wore a sharp blazer, her hair was perfectly styled, and she held a business card in her hand like a pro. But inside, Elena was drowning. She was currently talking to a man named Mark, or was it Mike? And her brain was doing a frantic dance. She was telling herself, look him in the eye. Don't look at the weird stain on his tie. Don't interrupt him. Remember to blink. Does my smile